Welcome everyone to the Centre for Social Impact's February seminar, which will be presented by Jian Zhao. Jian is a research fellow at the postdoctoral research fellow at the Centre for Social Impact at UWA. She's completed her PhD at the Graduate School of Education in 2022, and her thesis was about the key predictive factors in the mental health of Chinese university students at home and abroad. And so today we'll be hearing from her. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are on the land of the traditional owners of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and I pay respects to their elders past and present. And if you would like to, I know we're all coming in from different places today, please include in the chat the lands on which you are meeting as well. So yeah, we thank Jian for being here to present today. It's a very timely topic to think about the mental health of international students because at UWA, at least, they're just about to arrive on campus every year. And it's nice at this time of year when we welcome new international students to have insights into their well-being. And so, Jian, I will hand over to you, and she will hear from you. She's welcoming questions at the end of her presentation. So over to you, Jian.
Thank you, Lizette. Now I'm trying to share the screen with everyone. Okay, all right. So I'd like to start by acknowledging the land that we're meeting on today is Whadjuk Noongar land, and we pay our respects to their elders past and present. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to have this opportunity to present part of my research findings to you today. In this seminar, I will start by briefly introducing the background with evidence from existing literature. And the core of the seminar will revolve around the discoveries from a qualitative study I conducted prior to the pandemic, examining the potential threats to the emotional well-being of a group of Chinese international students in Australia. And then moving forward, I will provide some quantitative data on some specific factors that affect that may related to their mental health by comparing two groups of Chinese university students' mental health during COVID-19. And then I will briefly touch upon some new challenges emerged as we navigate the post-pandemic landscape. And then to wrap up, I will synthesize the implications of my findings. And then I want to underscore the critical role of evaluation in ensuring the effectiveness and the relevance of these programs. So my academic journey in the field of education with a focus on the mental health of international students was originally driven by my experience as an international student myself and a profound interest in understanding the diverse experiences of individuals living and studying overseas. And this passion led me to explore the mental health of international students, particularly those from my home country, China, who represent a significant and vibrant part of our academic community in Australia. Generally, university students are viewed as vulnerable to confronting mental health issues, mainly because a lot of them are undergoing a critical developmental transition during university times, and many have been reported to engage in high-risk health behaviors, and also because the university environments are lot strict school settings, this makes academic and social stress to them. International students are at even greater risk than their domestic peers because they are living away from home, navigating a different culture while speaking a different language, and they need to balance a lot of demands, but with very limited support because their families and friends are all in their home country. And why I'm interested in Chinese international students? According to Hofstede's cultural climate map, there is a high cultural distance between China and Australia, with Chinese culture differing more from Australian culture than cultures of some other countries, such as the UK and US from Australian culture. As a result, Chinese international students may experience more cultural differences than international students from some other countries while studying in Australia. And I would also like to argue that students from different cultural backgrounds should be treated as a distinct cohort rather than be viewed as a homogeneous group, because this will allow for a deeper understanding of each cohort's unique cultural nuances and educational needs and challenges. This will also facilitate the development of tailored educational practices, support services, and interventions that cater to the diverse needs and preferences of different student groups. And this is just a part of the Hofstede's culture climate map, and I'm not going to dive deep into this maps, just to give you a visualization about how different Chinese culture is different from Australian culture. Now, if you have interest in this map, you can explore about other dimensions through this link. Now let's turn our attention to some demographic composition of international students in Australia. And we found Chinese students occupies a large proportion of the total number of international students in Australia. But for COVID-19, this percentage is 38.03. And after, as of 5 December 2023, the percentage was slightly lower, but still over 1/3 of the total number of international students. And Chinese international students contribute greatly to Australia's economy and academic cultural diversity. Here, I want to make it clear that my intention is not to undermine the value of international students from other cultural backgrounds. On the contrary, I think it's important to acknowledge that students from different cultures face unique challenges, and recognizing these distinct experiences and needs is crucial rather than assuming a homogeneous experience for all international students. Now let's focus our attention on some concerning statistics regarding the mental health of Chinese international students in Australia. And a study by Lu and colleagues in 2014 found that out of 144 Chinese-speaking international students in Australia, 54% of them experienced high levels of psychological distress. And another research conducted by Redfern in 2016 indicates that Chinese international students in Australia suffer from significantly higher levels of anxiety and stress compared to their Australian peers. In 2020, we reviewed 19 studies on the mental health of Chinese international students in Australia, which were conducted between 1999 and January 2020, so just before COVID. And we found a lot of the studies reported increased fear, stress, anxiety, and depression among Chinese international students. And they are experiencing challenges in social interaction, and their overall well-being was declining. A lot of factors contribute to their mental health issues, like language barriers, academic, social, financial strains, and differing educational system and the use of mental health services. However, majority of the studies are focusing on undergraduate students, and some of the studies, they treat Chinese students from different cultural backgrounds as a homogeneous cohort. For example, they use the term students with ethnic Chinese background and include those from China, Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand in one single group. So now let's turn back the clock to the period before the COVID-19, a time that now seems like a different world. Prior to this global upheaval, my research focused on understanding the day-to-day experiences of Chinese international students in Australia as they navigated life in new cultural and educational settings through a qualitative lens. So my presentation on this section will be based on this study. And we recruited 19 Chinese students at the end of the first year of enrollment to participate in this study. And this includes 9 males and 10 females, and all of them are either master's or PhD students at an Australian university. To gather data, I utilized the semi-structured interviews, a method that allowed me to explore the students' perspectives in depth while providing enough flexibility to adapt to the flow of conversation. All interviews were conducted in Mandarin Chinese to enhance the validity of responses by enabling students to express their perspectives without linguistic constraints. And there is one central question: what are Chinese students' perspectives on their studies at an Australian university at the end of their first year of study? And of course, we developed conversation questions to engage participants in conversations across a wide range of areas to yield data regarding their perspectives. For example, looking back at your first year, how would you describe your overall experience studying at this university? And I use grounded theory to analyze data collected through semi-structured interviews. And this method enabled me to identify, analyze, and report patterns within the data, providing a structured yet flexible approach to understanding the complex realities of their students' lives. And 3 broad themes were generated from these interviews, and they are psychological stress, which is linked to language barriers, coping with shifts in pedagogy, and lifestyle changes. And the second group, perceived safety, which is linked to the lack of security, safety of possessions, and the perceived racial discrimination. And then social isolation, lacking a sense of belonging, lack of close personal connections, and feeling of loneliness and homesickness. Because time is limited, I'm not gonna cover everything. I will select several excerpts from the interviews to show what students say about their experiences. Language barriers, they say, not only bring pressures to their classroom interactions and academic performance, but also to their social interactions with others, or when they are in social situations. And students, for example, Mei Li said, because of language barriers, it took me about 5 or 6 times of the time of others to get things done. I was quite nervous and stressed. And the PhD student Zuo said, I just couldn't understand what my supervisor said. And Mei Li explained, because all these students, their English proficiency, they have met the minimal requirement of the university enrollment level, but they still feel difficult for speaking English. And they said the language, Mei Li said the language they use is very local with slang. They speak at a very fast speed, which I couldn't catch up and just couldn't get their jokes. And another theme is they said they have some pressure from coping with shifts in pedagogy. That one example is the group work activities. They said they didn't have that many group work activities when they did their undergraduate studies in China, but here they had to deal with the difficulties that when someone didn't contribute anything to the group discussions. And some of them said it's a bit difficult to deal with some people from some different cultures. And students also share the lifestyle changes bring them stress. For example, they said when they did their undergraduates in China, they live on campus, ate in cafeteria, and they meet their classmates almost every day. But here, when they move to Australia, they have to take care of everything themselves. They need to worry about rent, utility bills, and they need to think about the insurance, visas, medical examinations. So a lot of responsibilities. And the second broad theme is perceived safety. Chinese students interviewed in this study cited safety as a concern while living and studying in Australia. According to the definition given by WHO, safety has 2 dimensions: the objective dimension, which can be seen as behavioral and environmental factors measured against external criteria, and the subjective dimension, the individual's internal feelings or perceptions of being safe. And the themes emerged within this general theme from the interview data related to both dimensions. So the first one, some of them say that there are not many CCTVs here. They feel that if something bad happened to them, for example, if someone is missing, no one will ever find him or her. And the lack of another student, Lily, described her experience of being harassed by an offensive teenager. In doing so, she explicated another layer of concern. They said, we believe the law here would protect their teenagers. They would not speak for us. And then they also shared some experience of being stolen, but the police didn't help. And also their car window was broken into pieces and passports were stolen. And they feel, because of this, they feel it's unsafe. And the next theme under this broader safety theme is racial discrimination. Students share with me about their experiences of being discriminated. These two examples happened off campus, that some people just say some really bad things to them, very insulting. And there are also examples happened on campus. For example, this one, Gary shared his experience of being verbally attacked in one of the residential colleges in which he was living. He said it was during, the context was, it was during the orientation week. And he said, when I introduced myself that I came from China, I remember very clearly one local boy said to me, Chinese people really like cheating, don't you? And then I asked him, what did you say? And he said, oh, because it's my first week in the residential college, I didn't want to destroy the harmony, so I didn't say anything. And along with the more blatant acts of discrimination, as mentioned above, some other forms of discrimination were expressed in more subtle forms. For example, this one woman said she felt a salesperson are generally just nicer to the customer of their own race than they are to us. And the next theme is social isolation. Relocating to a new country may bring a sense of social isolation for international students. The Australian Institute of Health and Welfare defined the social isolation as a state of having minimal contact with others. While living in the host country, these students no longer have access to familiar cultural norms and social support systems, and may experience some changes in their identities and concepts of self. Students say that they don't feel they belong here, and they said, when I talk to people here, we don't have much to talk because I don't know much about their cultures or hobbies. And students say they had no good friends, no close friends. They only have some acquaintances. And some of them also express they feel lonely when they're sick, when they come back to their own, where they live, and they have no one to talk to. And they feel homesick during some traditional Chinese festivals like Mid-Autumn Festival. So these are some themes that were generated from the interviews, which might be threats that potentially affect their mental health. And these insights are crucial, maybe crucial for consideration when designing support programs, as it pointed to some specific areas that may require attention. So I will save the implications later. Now let's move our attention to COVID-19 time period. As we transition to discuss about the COVID-19, it's crucial to acknowledge how this unprecedented global crisis significantly impacted my research approach. As a result, my research took a turn to understand what are the factors that affect Chinese students' mental health when facing an adverse life event like COVID-19. While not directly linked to today's seminar topic, I've developed some tools during this period that have been empirically validated with input from Chinese university students. Although today's session does not cover skill development and validation in depth, I'm more than willing to share the papers or digital versions of the skills with anyone interested. Please don't hesitate to reach out, or you can just download from UWA One Search Library or ResearchGate. In this section, I would like to talk about two factors that may potentially threaten Chinese international students' mental health. And the first one is discrimination, which is defined as unfair or prejudicial treatment of people and groups based on characteristics such as race, gender, age, or sexual orientation by American Psychological Association, and racially based discrimination, targeting people of different colors, descents, ethnicities, and nationalities. Earlier in my presentation, I shared some quotes from Chinese international students I interviewed. They experienced racial discrimination. And following the COVID-19 outbreak, the situation was actually getting worse. Because of COVID-19, discrimination towards Chinese people greatly increased on a worldwide basis. In Australia, various cases of racist abuse and attacks and vandalism against the people of Chinese or Asian descent have been reported across the country because COVID was first reported in China. And previous research have demonstrated that discrimination is positively associated with indicators of mental health, such as depression. And the next factor I would like to discuss is social support, which has also been demonstrated by previous research that affect people's mental health. And here are two short skills I developed to measure perceived discrimination and perceived social support, because I will gonna use them later in my presentation. If you have any interest, I recommend you to have a read of this paper. It describes how they were developed and what are the reliability and validity evidence. And here is another brief skill we developed during this period of time, which can be used as a complement skill to Whole 5 or DES, because we found the majority of mental health skills are measuring states over a specific time period. But we're arguing that some people, they just stably have high, for example, they have stably high level of anxiety and stress. But if they do not experience like huge changes, that's okay. So that's why we developed this skill, because we think if some people just experience mental health changes, that is another sign that they are not doing really well. So in this during this period of time, one of the work we did is to compare two groups of Chinese students' mental health. And one group are Chinese international students who are studying in Australia, and the other group are Chinese domestic students who are studying in China. And we created the online survey to collect data. And it was entirely anonymous, and the link to the survey was distributed to potential participants via WeChat, which is the most popular social media among Chinese. And we gained electrical consent forms before they tap in the survey. They started the survey. And at the end, we got 734 Chinese domestic students and 108 Chinese international students. So we performed the maneuver to determine whether Chinese students studying in Australia or China differed significantly on the mental health indicators. And the mental health indicators we're using are Whole 5, DES, and MHCS, the one we developed ourselves. And then results indicates that there is a significant difference at 0.001 level. And we conducted a follow-up ANOVAs to further explore each of these significant multivariate effects across two groups of students. So we want to know if these two groups of students are differently each of this indicator. And we use home Bofferonia correction procedure in evaluating the NOVA outcomes to maintain the alpha level at 0.05 for MANOVA. And the results indicate that there is a significant univariate effect on all skills except for the anxiety. So they are all significant except for the death anxiety. And in every case, the significant result indicated a less favorable change in status for Chinese students studying in Australia. And then we want to know if whether perceived discrimination and the social support were significant mediators of the relationship between the country of residence, which means China or Australia, and the impacts of COVID-19 on mental health. So we performed a path analysis, and the numbers on the arrows from the country of residence to other variables indicates the strength and direction of these relationships, with negative values indicating an inverse relationship and positive values indicating a direct relationship. So here is a code. 1 represents Chinese domestic students and 2 represents Chinese international students. So the path from this indicates, for example, this is a positive relationship. So Chinese international students who are studying in Australia are more likely to experience perceived discrimination, and this negatively affect the mental health outcomes. So these are all negative relationships. Well, social support, Chinese international students studying in Australia are less likely to receive social support, but this social support are positively related to these mental health indicators. But this is not significant. And I also calculate total indirect effects. And as you can see, they are all significant at 0.05, 0.01 level, because they're or either larger than 2.56 or smaller than minus 2.56. And we can see a large portion of the indirect effect from country of residence to mental health variables, which was attributable to perceived discrimination. Only a small percentage of the indirect effects was attributable to social support. So what does this mean? Chinese international students reported higher depression, stress, mental health changes compared to their peers in China. Perceived discrimination was a significant mediating factor in mental health disparities. Surprisingly, both groups reported a similar level of perceived social support. And we guess possibly due to the increased use of communication media during that specific period of time. And now, as we consider the evolving situation of COVID-19 pandemic, it's important to turn our attention to the post-COVID. Well, I haven't conducted any formal research in this specific period of time, but there are some persistent issues and areas, emerging areas that warrant a significant investigation. And the first, racial-based discrimination, unfortunately, still persists. Recently, the Lowy Institute revealed that about 80% of Chinese Australians have faced racist attacks even 2 years post-pandemic. And additionally, new challenges are emerging, maybe not only for Chinese international students, but for the whole international students, or maybe for the whole Australian. But what I heard is I've talked to some Chinese international students, and there some factors that specific to international students put them in a disadvantaged position, like more disadvantaged position, because they are with student visa, and some of them it's their first time to be in Australia. They couldn't provide any rental history in Australia, and they couldn't provide referees who can speak English. And also the new policy lowering the age eligibility to 35 for graduate visa, which also puts some students in a dilemma. So implications. Here is a summary of implications for universities. And I think what universities can do that to enhance their pre-arrival orientation programs, not only to prepare students for the cultural and academic shifts, but also for the lifestyle changes. I think they need to know what they were expected and what they may experience before they came to Australia. And also, I think that's some useful information that prepares students to be independent before they leave their home country. And to provide some trustworthy and actionable information on secure housing options, which I think most universities have been already doing it. But I think we can also give them some training about how to apply for a house and accommodations effectively. Some safety orientation sessions let students to have a better understanding about local laws, personal safety practices, and also implement and strictly enforce a zero tolerance policy against racism discrimination. I know UWA has already done this, but I think it needs to be emphasized and clearly communicated to all students, faculty, and staff. And another practical implication is that maybe universities can organize some group excursions to local points of interest for first-year international students, because this can be an excellent initiative to have them connect with other people, because the accommodation style, the living environment is so different from what they used to experience. And there are something that Chinese international students should do themselves. First, I think they should keep learning English and increasing their cultural awareness. Meeting the minimum requirement of the English required by the university is not enough. And I think for our own well-being and mental health, and that's a must do. And another one is, I think they should be encouraged to report any incidents of racism or discrimination they experience. And this one is crucial, because if you are not reporting when you experience or when you witness, and if you do not report, that equals tolerance of this kind of actions. And they are also encouraged to be open to learning and adapting to new methods of study and instruction, even though that might be different from what they used to in their home country. And also cultivate self-reliance prior to leaving home country. Learn some basic skills like cooking, managing finance, etc. And here are some examples of support programs and services I gathered from different university websites. And I think it's pretty comprehensive. There are more I didn't list, but there are a lot. And some organizations such as Study Pass also aim to address broader issues faced by international students, providing them support with accommodation, employment, and legal rights. But then here comes the question: with so many supported services and resources, why some students are still not doing well? So maybe it's time to consider the effectiveness of these programs and support services. And that's why it's important and necessary to evaluate the effectiveness of support programs for international students. And this is really important because it will help meet the diverse and evolving needs of international students from different cultural backgrounds, because make sure that you have students from different cultural backgrounds' voice heard. And then it also helps in identifying gaps in services and areas needing improvement. It can also aid universities to make informed decisions about resources allocation, programs development. For example, during some specific period of time, maybe some specific programs are needed. It contributes to enhancing the overall experience and success of international students, which is also crucial for maintaining Australia's reputation as a favorable destination for international education. So at the end, I'd like to call for program evaluation for the support services and programs that supporting international students. And it should not be a one-off exercise, but an ongoing process. Here are some references. Thank you. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
All right. Well, people can post their questions in the chat box. I've just left a message in the meeting chat. Jian, can you see the question that just came through?
Yes, was the first question from Sam Noyes. Thank you so much, Sam. Was the type of accommodation that students were living in considered? What's the type of accommodation students were living in considered? Sorry, I don't quite understand. Can you please rephrase your question?
So, Jian, just to think about that question of accommodation and housing, yeah. So, if you were living in a university college versus a flat out there and shared accommodation, some of it can be pretty poor. Did that factor in to outcomes?
Well, I think when I interviewed students, I didn't ask about the types of accommodation, but some of them, they did mention that even they were living in the residential colleges, they still feel lonely. And some of them, they couldn't afford living in residential college. And also there are limited spots for students to apply. So a lot of factors that affect the accommodation, including the types of accommodation. I think ideally, students would prefer to have some safe and some convenient location that they can commute between universities and accommodations. Yeah, but it's really difficult nowadays because residential colleges are limited and there are so many international students.
I've got a question, Jian. First of all, thank you so much. That was really interesting and it highlights a lot of really rich work that you did. I want to explore one thing, and you talk about perceptions of safety. And there was
Yes.
something that I thought was really interesting, which was that they felt that they had diminished safety because there were fewer CCTV cameras. And that's a really interesting cultural crunch there, if you will, because I think Australia and Western and some societies, well, I won't say Western, but I think we look at safety in a different way, perhaps, that you don't rely so much on the state-controlled perception of being surveyed and monitored, but it's more creating environments that people are kind of kept in check or are looking after each other. So how did their perceptions change over time? Did they, how did they view this lack of CCTV monitoring and surveillance?
Yes. So because this is just a cross-sectional study, I didn't like interview them multiple times. It's just a one-off interview. But I did ask them a follow-up question. But some other people say that too many CCTV invade their privacy. What's your opinion? And I remember one student said, well, I think between privacy and safety, I think safety is more important. That's what he said. But I understand that's cultural difference because they were used to the environment that people everywhere is very they live in areas that you can see people all the time, and there if something happened that you can always rely on CCTV. And even myself, I remember once, because my first year PhD, my office was on Netherlands campus, and there was just one day I remember someone entered the room, so I immediately contacted the operation office and I said, can I please check the CCTV because I feel someone entered my room and I want to know who. And the staff from operation, she said, oh, sorry, we don't have CCTV here. Yeah, I think it's just the cultural differences. But yes, I think it's a good perspective. Maybe interview them in another time point to see if their perceptions changed.
Thanks.
Thank you. And I saw more questions. Did any of the students interviewed share examples of things that had helped them feel more welcome in Australia and university? Not as I remembered. I think because it's only their first year of study. Again, it's a cross-sectional study. I didn't interview them later. So they didn't share any examples, but I do remember one student who was living in residential college, and she said she was trying to make friends with students from other clubs, but she found it was really difficult because she couldn't keep the conversation going. What she talked, other students are not very interested in, and what other students talked, she just couldn't get it. So. Are there any longitudinal studies of Chinese international students' perspective in WA? I've seen some from UniMelb. Thank you, David. I don't see any longitudinal studies in WA. I was planning to, so when I first started my PhD, my first year, I was planning to interview them multiple times, but then COVID just started and those students just went back to their home country. And I do think it would be valuable to follow cohort from admission and to graduation at UWA. Yes, I do believe it's valuable to follow a cohort. And maybe not just in Chinese students, also international students from other countries, because they may have different perspectives. Were there any strong predictors of better mental health for students in Australia? In one of my other studies, I also investigated the different coping strategies, like problem-solving coping strategies, emotional-oriented coping strategies. That's some factors that affect some students are doing well, some students are not doing so well. So if you have any interest, I'm happy to share with the paper with you. Why only postgraduate students? only because the previous majority studies were focusing on undergraduate students, and I would like to know postgraduate students' experiences and perspectives. I think a lot of the themes emerged from the interviews. They may also apply to undergraduate students, except for maybe the educational system, because they didn't do their undergraduates in their home country. So they might adjust better, but that's just my assumption. I'm not too sure. Where that's another question from Kelly Adams. Were you able to capture the impact on completing their study pre and post of COVID, the number of students who took leave from study, citing mental health? Sorry, I didn't capture that. And also, I only did the survey once, so I didn't have pre-COVID data and post. I didn't have pre-COVID data. What strategies can you suggest to inspire our more reserved Chinese students to engage in curriculum activities and community? I work in a residential college, and despite time spent establishing trust and rapport, it is challenging cohort to engage. Yeah, that is a very good question. I think some traditional festivals will really attract the Chinese students, because there are some specific occasions that they feel homesick. And also a number of excursions, like bring them to different areas of Perth, because I found a lot of Chinese students, they do not drive because of public transport in China. Most Chinese students, international students, they don't drive. And they would be really involved if there are some organized events, because that's what we usually do when we were in China, that there are some organized events that people will go together. They can explore some interest sets, but it can also connect with other people. I know Study Perth, that's non-for-profit organization in WA, that they organize some events. But again, the spots are very limited. You need to be really quick to get some spots to get in. Okay, any more questions? You're welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Jian. I just wanted to say that lots of comments suggest people really are interested in your research and developing strategies from that. So hopefully your research can help people to understand the issue better and work on things that can improve the lives of international students from China in Australia.
Yes,
thank you very
so I'll just type my email address in. So if anyone have any further question, you feel free to ask me. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jian.
Thanks, Jian.
Thanks, Jian. Very
Thanks.
interesting.
Thanks, Jian. See you later.